The Denver courthouse smelled faintly of coffee, polished wood, and fear. It was the kind of smell that made even grown adults feel like kids again, small, unsure, and conspicuously out of place. Lily Carter clutched her worn stuffed puppy Max so tightly her knuckles turned white. The plush toy had been her constant companion through every storm, every night of whispered fears, every awkward stare from kids who didn't understand. Today, it wasn't just a companion. It was armor. At 8 years old, Lily was smaller than most of the courtroom benches, barely reaching the polished oak seat. She had always been quiet, thoughtful, the kind of child whose mind raced far ahead of her body. But even she felt the intimidation of a room full of people who didn't believe she belonged there. The murmurs started as soon as she walked in. Lawyers trading sideways glances, jurors shifting in their seats, reporters smirking behind their pads. She knew what they were thinking. What can an 8-year-old possibly know? Her Aunt Marissa tried to soothe her with a gentle squeeze of her shoulder. "You're going to be fine," she whispered. Lily nodded, but she didn't feel fine. Not in the least. The bright lights reflected off the courtroom's high ceilings, bouncing off the polished wood, making the whole place look almost unreal, like stepping into a stage rather than a place of justice. She could hear the echo of her small shoes against the marble floor as she followed Marissa toward the bench. Every step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the skeptical eyes of adults who had no idea what she was carrying inside. The case had been ongoing for months, a grim story that had started in their quiet suburban neighborhood and ended here, under fluorescent lights and the weight of legal procedure. Lily's mother had been attacked in their own home, and the suspect, a man with close ties to their community, was now in the defendant's chair, watching as if her presence was some inconvenient obstacle. Her mother, seated across the aisle, tried to smile reassuringly, but her face betrayed exhaustion, worry, and an edge of fear that even Lily felt in her chest. The first lawyer, a tall man in a gray suit, cleared his throat and began speaking to the judge. His words were formal, polished, meant to intimidate and to control, but Lily barely registered them. Her eyes were drawn elsewhere to the far end of the courtroom, where a German shepherd sat obediently beside a uniformed officer. The dog's fur glinted under the harsh lighting, and his eyes, dark and observant, seemed to follow her with an intensity that made her shiver. Everyone else ignored him, treating him as a benign fixture, but Lily felt it differently. Something in the dog's gaze was alive, intelligent, almost expectant, like he was waiting for her. She knelt slightly, adjusting Max under her arm, and felt her heart speed up. The adults were still whispering among themselves, casting occasional glances at her that were laced with doubt or amusement. A few jurors even chuckled softly when she accidentally dropped Max on the floor. "Cute," one muttered. "She probably doesn't even understand the case." Lily's cheeks burned, but she didn't let herself cry. She had learned a long time ago that tears didn't help when nobody was listening. And today, she was going to be heard somehow. As she sank into her small seat, she felt the presence of the dog again, closer now, as if he had sensed her hesitation. His ears twitched, his gaze didn't waver, and for a brief moment, Lily allowed herself to imagine that Max wasn't just a stuffed toy and that Arrow, that was the dog's name, she knew was more than a trained K9. In her mind, he was a partner, a guardian, someone who could help her carry the burden of what she needed to do. The court clerk called the room to order, and the judge's gavel pounded, sharp and decisive, echoing through the high-ceilinged room. "We are here for the testimony of Lily Carter," the judge announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a knife. There was a pause. A ripple went through the spectators. They all knew she was young. Too young, many whispered silently, to grasp the gravity of what had happened. But Lily had known from the moment the police had asked her to recount the events that she would tell them, in her own way, the truth that adults kept missing. Her aunt leaned close. "You can do this, Lily, just tell them what happened." Lily nodded again, though she didn't feel like she could. She felt fear. She felt the weight of everyone's judgment. She felt the sharp pang of anger toward the man who had destroyed her sense of safety. And somewhere beneath it all, she felt the tiniest spark of courage, a spark she didn't fully understand but knew she had to follow. The defendant glanced at her briefly, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Don't let the kids scare you," he whispered under his breath, more to the gallery than to anyone else. The words were meant to belittle, to unsettle her, but Lily didn't flinch. She looked instead at Arrow, who had slowly inched closer, positioning himself as if standing guard over her. The dog's presence steadied her, grounding her in a way no human had been able to. It was then that she realized she wasn't alone. As the first questions were asked, Lily's voice trembled at first. She stammered over a few words, almost forgetting the details she had rehearsed 1,000 times. But Arrow's eyes never left hers, and with a deep, quiet breath she began to speak. The words came slowly at first, then faster, painting a picture of that night. The shadow at the window, the sudden crash, the sound of her mother calling for help. Her fingers clutched Max tightly, pressing him to her chest like a shield. And then it happened. A lawyer from the defense, his voice dripping with disbelief, interrupted. "Are you sure you even understand what you're saying, little girl?" A few people in the courtroom snickered, echoing the sentiment Lily had feared. Her stomach twisted. She wanted to shrink into herself, to disappear. But instead she raised her eyes not to the judge, not to the attorneys, but to Arrow. The dog tilted his head slightly, as if nodding in encouragement. His calm, unwavering presence spoke louder than any words. Lily felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, but it was accompanied by a strange surge of certainty. She could do this. She had to do this. The man who everyone thought she was too small to confront was about to discover that underestimating her was a fatal mistake. And just as she opened her mouth to continue, Arrow stood suddenly, ears alert, tail stiff. He didn't growl, he didn't bark. He simply stared at a figure at the far end of the courtroom, a door that led to the witness room. The sudden movement caught everyone's attention. The handler looked confused, tugging lightly at the leash. But Arrow didn't move from his position beside Lily. He was focused, almost rigid, fixated on something no one else seemed to notice. Lily's eyes followed the dog's gaze, and in that instant she realized something that made her heart pound like a drum. Arrow had seen something critical, something that could change everything in this courtroom, in this case, in her life. She clutched Max even tighter and whispered to herself, "It's time." The courtroom held its collective breath, unaware that this tiny girl, overlooked, underestimated, and laughed at, was about to speak to a dog in a way that would upend everything they thought they knew about the trial. And when she finally whispered to Arrow, the dog's ears twitched, and something unthinkable began to happen. No one in the room knew it yet, but the moment Lily spoke to Arrow would become the turning point of the trial, a moment that would make headlines, shatter assumptions, and leave the entire courtroom questioning everything. And Lily, she felt a strange, fierce power swell inside her, a mix of fear, courage, and determination that made her impossible to ignore. The judge cleared his throat, the attorneys leaned forward, and reporters scribbled faster. And in the silence, the dog's deep, unwavering stare locked with hers. Then Lily spoke her first words to Arrow, words that would change the trial forever. Arrow's deep brown eyes didn't waver. The courtroom had gone quiet, the murmurs fading into uneasy whispers as all attention subtly shifted from the girl to the dog. Lily leaned closer to him, her small hand brushing over his sleek fur. The soft brush of fur against her palm steadied her racing heartbeat. No one else could see it yet, not the attorneys, not the jurors, not even the judge. But Arrow was reacting to something far beyond normal canine perception. His muscles were tense, his gaze sharp, and a low, almost imperceptible growl hummed in his throat. Lily whispered, her voice so quiet only Arrow could hear, "He's hiding something, I know it." The dog's ears perked. He stepped closer to her, nudging gently as if to reassure her, "I understand." The handler tugged lightly at the leash, attempting to maintain control, but Arrow didn't respond. His body was rigid, protective, almost defiant. The dog's focus had shifted not on the crowd, not on the judge, not on the defendant in the dock, but somewhere else entirely. Lily felt the pull, the invisible thread connecting Arrow's attention to something hidden, something crucial. Across the room, a few jurors whispered among themselves. "Why is the dog staring at that door?" one muttered. "It's just a kid. It can't be important." But Lily knew better. She had spent months replaying the night in her mind, obsessively remembering every sound, every shadow, every fleeting moment of confusion and fear. She had memorized every detail of her mother's attack, every footstep, every muffled voice. And now, with Arrow's guidance, the fragments were beginning to align in ways no adult had yet noticed. The dog's gaze fixed on the door leading to the witness room. Inside, the defendant's cousin, who was expected to testify in his favor, shuffled papers and muttered to himself, unaware of the silent judgment that was approaching. Arrow growled again, low and controlled, a warning, a signal. Lily's small hand rested on the dog's head. She felt the tremor in his body, the tension coiled in his muscles. And for the first time, she realized that Arrow wasn't just sensing danger. He was sensing truth, something hidden, something the adults had overlooked. "Do you see him?" Lily whispered. Her voice trembled slightly, though her eyes were sharp. Arrow responded by taking a deliberate step closer to the door, the growl deepening. The handler tried again to intervene. "Arrow, come," he commanded, tugging on the leash. But Arrow ignored him. His focus was absolute. The courtroom staff froze, unsure what was happening, but the air thickened with anticipation. Lily's mind raced. The cousin's voice from the night of the attack, a panicked, hurried tone, echoed in her memory. "We should go now." It had been a phrase she barely registered at the time, a whisper between shadows, but Arrow's reaction reminded her of its importance. She realized with a jolt that the cousin must have been involved in ways no one suspected. Her pulse quickened. She had pieces of a puzzle that the adults didn't even know existed, and the dog was the first to recognize it. The judge shifted in his seat, frowning. "Miss Carter, is everything all right?" Lily nodded, barely blinking. I think he knows something," she said, her small voice steady but urgent. She didn't refer to the cousin by name, she didn't need to. Arrow's growl, his unflinching gaze, did all the talking. The courtroom had fallen into a strange silence. Even the defendant's smirk faltered as his eyes followed the dog's movement. The cousin shifted nervously, unaware that the entire room was starting to notice his agitation. Sweat gleamed on his forehead. He muttered something under his breath and shuffled in his seat, but his glance flicked repeatedly toward the dog and the little girl beside him. There was no recognition yet of what was coming, no understanding of how this small child and a dog could unravel the carefully constructed defense. But the tension was building, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Lily whispered again to Arrow, her voice barely audible. "Look at his hands, look at the way he moves. He's scared, but he's hiding more than that." Arrow's body stiffened. He inched even closer, the leash taut against the handler's grip, the growl deepening into a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. The jurors shifted in their seats, the attorneys leaned forward, and a few reporters raised their pens instinctively, sensing the story was about to take an unexpected turn. Then Lily did something no one anticipated. She stood, small but unwavering, her hand still resting on Arrow's head. "He didn't act alone," she said, loud enough that every ear in the room could hear. "There was someone else, and he's lying." A murmur swept across the courtroom. The defense attorney's face went pale and the judge's brow furrowed. "Miss Carter, please," the judge began, but Lily continued, her words picking up momentum as the memory of that night flowed back. She described the second figure she had glimpsed in the shadows, the hushed tones, the footsteps that didn't belong to the defendant. Every detail was precise, vivid, the slight rasp in the voice, the hesitation, the direction of the steps. Arrow barked sharply, not aggressively, but insistently, drawing the attention of everyone in the courtroom. The cousin flinched, a hand to his mouth, eyes wide. He hadn't expected a dog or a child to recognize his involvement. He had counted on the chaos of legal procedure to shield him, and now a girl and a K-9 had pierced through the layers of deception he had relied on. The defense attorney tried to intervene. "Objection! Your Honor, this is preposterous. She is a child, she cannot testify to such specifics with accuracy." But the judge raised a hand. "Overruled, continue." Lily swallowed hard, her small frame trembling slightly but her voice unwavering. "He tried to make me stay quiet," she said, "but the dog, he knows." A ripple ran through the courtroom. Reporters exchanged wide-eyed glances. Jurors leaned forward, hanging on the smallest detail, and the cousin's face turned a shade paler than the walls. He adjusted his tie nervously, but every movement betrayed him, and Arrow noticed. The dog's growl shifted, low and deliberate, as though marking the cousin's fear for everyone to see. For the first time, the courtroom realized this wasn't just a small child floundering under pressure. This was Lily Carter, a girl who had memorized every crucial detail, who had observed the tiny cracks adults missed, and who had a K-9 partner trained to recognize the truth. Her bravery wasn't loud. It wasn't flamboyant. It was precise, measured, and undeniable. And just when the tension seemed unbearable, Arrow did something unexpected. He stepped deliberately toward the door of the witness room, placing himself squarely between it and Lily. He didn't bark. He didn't lunge. He simply blocked the path, muscles taut, eyes locked on the unseen figure inside. The handler tried to pull him back, but the dog's focus was absolute. The courtroom collectively held its breath. No one spoke. Not the judge, not the attorneys, not the jurors. Even the gallery of spectators leaned forward, sensing the shift in momentum. Something was about to happen, something that no one in the room could anticipate, not even the defendant, who now sat frozen, watching his cousin's sudden fidgeting. And Lily, small and trembling but resolute, whispered to Arrow one last time, "They have to tell us the truth, now." Arrow's ears twitched. His stance didn't change, and the air in the courtroom thickened with suspense, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the moment when the hidden truth would emerge from the shadows. It was the kind of moment that reporters dream of, the kind of moment that defines a trial, and Lily knew, deep in her bones, that whatever happened next would change everything. The cousin shifted in the witness room. He wasn't prepared. He didn't expect that a child, a girl, and a dog would see through him, and yet the moment of reckoning had arrived. Arrow growled again, controlled, warning, deliberate, and the courtroom leaned forward collectively, unaware that this small, seemingly inconsequential girl was about to start unraveling a conspiracy that had remained hidden for months. And Lily, gripping Max tightly, felt a strange thrill of power. She had always felt invisible in a room full of adults, but now every eye in the room was drawn to her. She realized that courage came in unexpected packages, and sometimes justice came with a bark. No one in the courtroom knew what she had said to Arrow, but they all sensed it mattered. And for Lily, that knowledge, the understanding that she and the dog were the first to sense the truth, was enough to ignite a spark that would burn through the rest of the trial. End of Part 2, leaving readers on suspense. What exactly has Arrow sensed, and how will it reveal the hidden truth? The courtroom held its collective breath as Arrow's gaze remained fixed on the door to the witness room. No one understood what the dog was sensing, but the atmosphere had shifted. Even the judge, a man accustomed to chaos, leaned forward slightly, squinting at the little girl who seemed to radiate quiet authority. Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She had never felt so small and so powerful at the same time. Her small fingers clutched Max tightly, but her mind raced with clarity. The pieces she had observed over the months, the fleeting shadows, the hushed tones, all pointed to one thing. Someone was hiding something crucial. The handler, Officer Daniels, tugged lightly at Arrow's leash. "He's reacting to someone in there," Daniels whispered, almost to himself. "He shouldn't. He's not trained to pick up this kind of stress unless there's deception or danger." Lily nodded slightly. She had noticed it too, all the tiny inconsistencies the adults had overlooked. The cousin's nervous energy, the subtle hesitation in his movements, even the way he avoided eye contact with the court clerk, it all screamed that he was carrying secrets too heavy to admit. Arrow had sensed what she had only begun to piece together, and now the dog was holding a warning she couldn't ignore. The courtroom remained silent. Jurors leaned forward in their seats, intrigued by the strange tension. Reporters instinctively scribbled notes, sensing a narrative that was about to break wide open. The defendant shifted in his chair, casting nervous glances toward the little girl and the dog, a smirk of overconfidence faltering for the first time. He didn't understand why a child and a dog could be the center of attention, but his cousin did, and he could feel the shift. Inside the witness room, the cousin's hands trembled as he sorted through his papers. He thought he was alone. He thought the trial would proceed according to plan. But Arrow's presence had penetrated his sense of security. The dog's eyes, unblinking, locked onto him like a predator tracking its prey. He paused, suddenly aware that someone, a child, had already seen through the layers of his lies. Lily whispered to Arrow again, "Look at the way he's moving. He's scared, but there's more. He's hiding details he didn't plan for anyone to notice." Arrow's tail flicked, almost imperceptibly, and he let out a low, rumbling growl. It wasn't a threat, not yet. It was a signal, a nudge toward truth. Lily understood immediately. She had rehearsed her testimony countless times, but this was different. This was not just what she remembered. This was what she now knew, that the cousin's fear and the dog's reaction were connected to something the adults hadn't noticed. Complicity, concealment, and the smallest fragments of evidence that could undo the defense's entire case. Officer Daniels stepped closer, still confused but sensing Lily's confidence. "What is it?" he asked in a hushed tone. "He knows about the second person," Lily said quietly. "The one who helped him, he's hiding it. Arrow knows." Daniel's eyes widened. "The second person," he whispered, glancing at the door. Lily nodded, her small face serious. "Yes, he thinks we don't see him, but we do, and the dog, he can tell when someone's lying." Arrow stepped even closer to the door, his body rigid, muscles coiled like a spring. The cousin froze mid-motion, sensing the scrutiny without looking up. His lips pressed together. His hands shook. He muttered under his breath, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." The words were faint, almost inaudible, but Lily heard them. Arrow's ears twitched sharply, and he barked once, soft but deliberate. The sound cut through the courtroom like a bell, drawing all eyes to the little girl and the dog. Every adult froze, realizing something significant was happening, though none of them fully understood what. The defendant's smirk faded. He leaned back, unease flickering across his face for the first time. The defense attorney's jaw tightened, sensing the shift in momentum. The cousin's voice, though barely audible, had betrayed him, and Arrow's unwavering gaze reinforced what the little girl already knew: the secret had been discovered. The judge cleared his throat. "Officer, what is the meaning of this disturbance?" Daniels swallowed, glancing down at the leash in his hand. "Your Honor, he's reacting to someone in the witness room. There's unusual stress. Something's not right." The courtroom murmured, a low hum of confusion and curiosity. The jurors exchanged looks, intrigued. The reporters leaned forward, pens poised. The defendant's eyes darted toward the door, unease creeping in. His carefully constructed defense was beginning to crumble under the pressure of a child and a dog who had noticed what everyone else missed. Lily took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "He knows more than he's telling," she said, "and if we wait, we'll miss it." Arrow's growl deepened, vibrating through the polished floors. The cousin's head jerked up slightly and he froze, suddenly aware of the silent accusation. He glanced at the door, then at Arrow, then at Lily. His breath quickened. He fumbled with his papers, realizing that he could not hide what had happened. Lily whispered again, just loud enough for Arrow to hear, "We need to see. He needs to tell us." The dog stepped forward, nudging her hand gently with his nose. It was an unmistakable signal. Now is the time. Officer Daniels hesitated, torn between protocol and instinct. "Miss Carter, are you sure?" he asked. Lily nodded. Her chest was tight with anticipation, but her eyes were sharp, her small frame resolute. "Yes, he can't lie if we listen. Arrow can feel it." The courtroom was electric with tension. Every adult in the room felt it, the invisible weight of a moment about to change everything. And in the witness room, the cousin's confidence collapsed. His fingers shook violently. Sweat streamed down his temples. He realized too late that the child and the dog had seen through him in ways he had never anticipated. He muttered again, voice cracking, I can't, I didn't mean. Arrow growled once more, a low, controlled warning that seemed to echo in the hearts of everyone present. Lily felt a surge of determination. She was small, yes, but she was fearless in this moment. She understood something the adults couldn't. The truth was alive, and it could not be ignored. Suddenly, Arrow lunged slightly forward, just enough to signal the cousin to stop moving. The man froze, pressed against the corner of the witness room, panic radiating off him in visible waves. The handler barely managed to restrain the dog, but the message was clear. Someone was hiding critical information, and the dog would not allow it to remain secret. The judge leaned forward, tension flickering across his face. Miss Carter, explain yourself. Lily's voice was steady, firm, yet gentle. He's hiding someone, and Arrow knows. Every adult in the courtroom held their breath. The cousin's hands flew to his face. His legs shook beneath the table. The defense attorney's notes fell to the floor unnoticed. The gallery leaned forward, captivated by the smallest girl in the room commanding attention with nothing but her voice and the silent power of a dog beside her. Lily whispered one final time to Arrow, "Show them what we know." The dog responded instantly. His stance became protective yet unyielding. Every muscle in his body communicated truth, pay attention, look closely. And in that instant the courtroom understood. This was no ordinary trial. The little girl had uncovered something hidden, and the dog had validated it. No one yet knew the full story. No one understood the depth of what Lily and Arrow had perceived. But the cousin, the defendant, and even the adults in the courtroom could feel the shift. The moment when a secret they had counted on to remain buried suddenly became vulnerable to exposure. And the suspense hung in the air, thick, heavy, and impossible to ignore. The courtroom waited, tense, curious, fearful, because everyone knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Something that could change the trial forever. The air in the courtroom felt electric, taut with a tension no one could quite explain. Lily's small voice had pierced through the formal procedures, and Arrow's low, unwavering growl had amplified her presence in ways the adults hadn't anticipated. Every eye followed the dog's rigid stance, every ear perked to the child's whispered commands. And in the witness room, the cousin's carefully rehearsed composure began to crumble. He shifted in his seat, papers trembling in his hands. The subtle sheen of sweat on his forehead caught the light, a visible testament to the panic that was consuming him. He had always relied on being inconspicuous, on blending into the background, on keeping the adults distracted. But Arrow saw through him, and Lily, the small, underestimated girl, had already understood what the dog had sensed. Every instinct in the cousin screamed that the walls were closing in. Arrow's gaze didn't leave him for a second. The dog's growl vibrated through the polished floors, low and steady, like a metronome of impending reckoning. Lily's hand rested gently on Arrow's head, steadying him as she whispered once more, her voice calm, quiet, and almost hypnotic in its conviction. "He's hiding something big. I know it." The cousin's eyes darted toward the door, then to the handler, then to Lily herself. Panic flickered across his face. His lips trembled as he muttered under his breath, words half-formed and incoherent. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't mean." "Excuse me," the defense attorney shouted, snapping the courtroom's attention back to him. "This child is making accusations without any evidence. This is preposterous." But the judge held up a hand, his eyes narrowing as he studied Lily and Arrow. "We will proceed with caution, but let her continue. Officer, ensure the dog remains controlled." Daniels held the leash tighter, feeling Arrow's muscles tense like coiled springs. He had never seen the dog respond to fear and deception with such precision. Arrow wasn't just reacting to obvious danger, he was sensing deceit, the subtle tremor of guilt that even trained eyes couldn't detect. And the cousin, trapped in his own panic, was the epicenter of that revelation. Lily's small voice cut through the room again. He tried to tell me nothing happened, but I know the voice I heard. The second person, it wasn't him alone. The courtroom murmured. Jurors leaned forward, reporters scribbled faster, and even the defendant's eyes widened slightly. No one had expected that the child, with the dog at her side, would pick up on such a subtle, critical detail. The cousin swallowed hard, his hands gripping the edge of the table. He knew he was exposed, even if the adults didn't yet understand why. Arrow took a deliberate step toward the door, blocking any possible retreat. He growled again, not viciously, but warningly, a signal that this was the moment of truth. The cousin's breath hitched. His eyes flicked nervously toward the small girl who had dared to whisper commands to a dog that no one else seemed to understand. Lily's voice became steadier, more confident. He didn't act alone. I heard two voices that night, yours and someone else. And the dog knows it too. The cousin's face drained of color. His fingers fumbled with papers, knocking them to the floor. The defense attorney bent to pick them up, but the man's hands were trembling too violently to be of any use. He muttered, almost under his breath, "I can't, it's too late." Arrow's growl deepened into a low, resonant rumble. The handler barely restrained him as the dog leaned forward, nose twitching, eyes fixed on the cousin. The message was clear, we know. There is no hiding. The defendant shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His smirk had completely disappeared. He realized suddenly that the carefully constructed narrative he had relied on was cracking before his eyes. The cousin, the one person he trusted to maintain his version of events, was faltering, and he had no idea why. Inside the witness room, the cousin's panic escalated. He covered his face with his hands, shaking, muttering incoherent fragments. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I told him to stop. Why is she here? Why does the dog?" Lily leaned closer to Arrow, whispering again, guiding him silently. "Don't let him escape it. He can't lie anymore, not with you watching." Arrow responded instantly, stepping closer to the door, blocking any exit. His growl sharpened, a low, deliberate warning that cut through the tense courtroom atmosphere. The jurors felt the vibration under the polished floorboards. The reporters stiffened, sensing that the trial had shifted from procedural to extraordinary. The cousin's breathing became erratic. His body shook. Every instinct he had relied upon to stay calm in front of adults failed. He had always thought a child's testimony could be dismissed and a dog's instincts ignored. But here, in the courtroom, confronted by a little girl and her canine ally, he realized the truth. He could no longer hide. "Stop it, stop looking at me," he finally shouted, voice cracking, but Arrow didn't move. The dog's stance was unwavering, muscles taut, eyes dark and alert. Lily, small and composed, nodded slightly as if to say, "Yes, this is it. This is the moment." Officer Daniels stepped cautiously toward the door, unsure whether to intervene. "Sir, please calm down," he said gently, but the cousin's panic overrode any sense of control. The murmurs in the courtroom rose. The jurors exchanged incredulous glances. Even the judge leaned forward, sensing something monumental was occurring. The defense attorney tried to regain control. "Objection! Your Honor, the child." But the judge shook his head. "We will allow the moment to unfold. Proceed with caution." Lily's voice, small but firm, carried across the room. "He knows something. He's afraid. He's hiding it, but we can see it. He can't fool us." The cousin's head jerked up at her words. His eyes met hers for the first time, wide, unblinking, filled with terror. He realized in that instant that his deception had been exposed. And Arrow, standing guard beside Lily, was the physical manifestation of that exposure. The dog's growl resonated like a heartbeat, signaling to everyone in the courtroom that the tension had reached a critical peak. The cousin suddenly bolted, not toward the witness chair, not toward his papers, but toward the exit door. Arrow lunged forward, not aggressively, but with purpose, intercepting him mid-step. The handler braced against the leash as the dog blocked the cousin's path, forcing him to stop. The man's panic intensified, and he stumbled backward, tripping over the chair and collapsing in a heap. A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. Jurors sat forward, reporters scribbled furiously, and the gallery fell silent, stunned. The defendant's eyes widened, horror flickering across his face. His carefully maintained world was unraveling in real time, exposed by a little girl and a dog who understood truths that adults had missed. Lily knelt beside Arrow, whispering gently, guiding him without moving a muscle herself. "It's okay. Now they have to tell us." The cousin's face was pale, eyes wide, sweat streaked down his cheeks. He trembled uncontrollably, trapped by his own guilt, Arrow's vigilance, and the quiet authority of an 8-year-old girl who refused to back down. The courtroom felt suspended in time, every person aware that a breakthrough was imminent. Every eye followed the cousin, every ear strained for his next words. And for the first time, Lily understood the depth of her own courage. Fear was present, yes, but it was now a tool she could wield. With Arrow at her side, she was no longer invisible. She was the center of a force that even adults couldn't ignore. And in that heavy, electric silence, the cousin finally whispered, almost under his breath but loud enough for Lily to hear. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I didn't want her to see, Ika." The words hung in the air, suspended between confession and panic. Arrow growled again, a low, controlled warning. The judge, the attorneys, the jurors, and even the defendant leaned forward, sensing that the moment of reckoning had arrived. And Lily, small and resolute, knew that the trial had shifted irrevocably. The truth, which had been hidden in shadows and half-spoken words, was on the verge of emerging. End of Part 4, leaving readers in suspense. What exactly did the cousin reveal, and how will the courtroom react to his unraveling? The courtroom felt suspended in an uneasy stillness, like the air itself had been charged with anticipation. Every eye was on the cousin, whose hands shook violently as he tried to compose himself but failed. Arrow, standing resolutely beside Lily, growled a low, warning rumble that reverberated through the polished courtroom floor. It wasn't an aggressive sound. It was a signal, a clear indication that the cousin could not escape the truth any longer. Lily clutched Max tightly, whispering softly to the dog, "Now they have to see it." The cousin's breathing was shallow, quick, uneven. Sweat streaked his pale face as he realized the eyes of the courtroom were glued to him, and the whispers of the spectators seemed to echo inside his skull. He had believed his involvement in the events of that night could remain hidden. He had counted on adults underestimating Lily, dismissing her as a scared child. He had counted on Arrow being just another dog. He had been wrong. The judge, a seasoned man who had seen countless witnesses crumble under pressure, leaned forward. "Sir, are you prepared to provide your testimony?" His voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge of curiosity he could sense, as could everyone else, that this trial had pivoted on a tiny, unexpected axis: the small girl and her dog. The cousin's lips trembled. He opened his mouth, closed it, and muttered, I ca." His voice was almost inaudible, but the tremor carried the weight of guilt that had been festering for months. Arrow's growl intensified slightly, a reminder that he was watching, that no falsehood could pass undetected. Lily's voice, small but unwavering, reached the edges of the courtroom. "He has to tell the truth. Arrow knows it, I know it. You can't hide it anymore." The murmurs of the crowd rose. Jurors leaned forward, reporters scribbled furiously, and the defendant's eyes widened with fear. For the first time, the carefully constructed defense that had seemed unshakable was trembling on its foundations. The cousin's hands flew to his face, covering his eyes. I didn't mean, it wasn't supposed to happen like that." His voice broke into a trembling sob. Every muscle in his body betrayed him. He had intended to protect himself and the defendant, to maintain the facade of innocence. Now, confronted by the unblinking gaze of a child and the unwavering presence of a K-9, he had no defenses left. Arrow stepped closer, nose twitching, tail stiff, and growled again, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate the courtroom walls. The message was clear. The truth could no longer be contained. The cousin's panic escalated, and in a sudden, desperate moment, he blurted, He told me to keep quiet. I didn't want her to see. I didn't." The words hung in the air, shocking the courtroom into silence. Every reporter's pen froze mid-scribble. The jurors sat forward, tense, leaning toward the witness room as if proximity could force clarity. The defendant's face drained of color. The cousin's revelation, however fragmented, shattered the foundation of his defense. He had relied on silence, on the invisibility of the crime, on the adults underestimating an 8-year-old. Now, the truth was clawing its way out. Lily pressed closer to Arrow, whispering softly, "It's okay. Let them hear it, let them see." The dog's tail flicked once in acknowledgement, muscles taut, eyes focused. Arrow wasn't acting out of aggression. He was validating Lily's perception, reinforcing the evidence that adults had overlooked. The judge cleared his throat, breaking the spellbinding silence. "Sir, you will need to clarify your statement for the record. Please explain what you mean by keeping quiet." The cousin's voice cracked as he finally attempted to speak clearly. The man, he attacked her mother. I saw him that night and I was supposed to stop him, but I didn't. I was afraid. I thought nobody would believe me. I didn't want the little girl, I didn't want anyone to know what happened. Gasps swept through the courtroom. The defendant's smirk had vanished completely. The jurors exchanged incredulous glances. Even the seasoned lawyers were momentarily stunned. The fragments of truth Lily had gathered, reinforced by Arrow's behavior, were now being articulated aloud. The prosecutor rose, voice steady but intense. "Sir, did anyone else participate in the crime?" The cousin hesitated, his gaze flicking to the door, to Arrow, then back to Lily. There was someone else. I thought I could cover for him. I didn't know she was awake. I didn't know she would notice. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Lily's eyes widened slightly, but her voice remained calm. "That's the second voice I heard. You said it. I knew you were lying." Arrow barked softly once, sharp, deliberate, like punctuation on Lily's words. The courtroom shivered in the sudden, electric tension. Every adult now understood that the little girl's observation and the dog's instincts were not just peripheral details. They were central to uncovering the hidden truth. The cousin's hands flew to his face again, his body trembling uncontrollably. I didn't mean for her to see it. I didn't want. It's all my fault." The defendant's head snapped up, panic flashing across his features. He had trusted the cousin implicitly to maintain silence, to reinforce his narrative. Now, his only ally was crumbling under the gaze of a child and a dog. Lily pressed closer to Arrow, whispering, "We see it, let them hear it, don't hide it." Arrow's growl became almost a hum, a resonant, steady vibration that filled the room. The jurors leaned forward as if drawn by an invisible thread. The cousin's confession was no longer a series of fragmented words. It was becoming a narrative, a timeline, a map of what had happened that night. Officer Daniels, still holding Arrow's leash, whispered to the judge, "He's not lying." The dog sensing every change in his body, every micro-expression. The judge nodded slowly, absorbing the enormity of the situation. "Continue," he instructed, voice calm but firm. "We need to hear the full truth." The cousin's sobs intensified. His body shook violently, and yet, through the chaos, his words began to form a coherent story. He described the night, the struggle, the way the second figure had encouraged silence. Every detail Lily had remembered, every subtle cue Arrow had detected, was being confirmed in real time. The courtroom was rapt. Reporters leaned forward, pens flying across paper. The jurors were frozen, eyes wide, every sense alert. The defendant's face was pale, lips trembling. The cousin's unraveling testimony was tearing apart the defense's carefully constructed world. Finally, the cousin paused, hands shaking, chest heaving. Arrow's eyes locked on him, steady, unyielding. Lily whispered, "Finish it, tell them everything." And the cousin, trembling, tearful, and exposed, did something that shocked everyone. He nodded and said clearly for the first time, There's nothing left to hide. I didn't want anyone to know, but the little girl and the dogs, they know. And they're right, I can't lie anymore." The courtroom erupted into murmurs, gasps, and stunned silence. Every adult in the room realized that the chain of hidden truths was beginning to unravel. And through it all, Lily's small presence and Arrow's unwavering vigilance had been the catalyst. But even in this moment of revelation, the tension didn't dissipate. The question on everyone's mind, the one that held the courtroom in suspended disbelief, remained. What other secrets would be revealed, and how far-reaching was the conspiracy that had nearly gone undetected? Lily, clutching Max and standing next to Arrow, met the cousin's gaze calmly. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, and didn't speak. The dog's growl softened, almost imperceptibly, but his stance remained protective. And in that silence, the courtroom understood. The trial had shifted irreversibly. The moment was not over. The full truth had yet to emerge. And as the cousin's confession hung in the air, tremulous but undeniable, every person in the room knew the tension would reach its peak in the next revelation. Of Part 5, leaving readers in suspense. How far will the cousin's confession go, and what new evidence will it reveal that changes the trial completely? The courtroom hung in an electric silence, the kind that made the polished floors feel almost sticky with anticipation. Every eye followed Lily, the little girl who had captured the attention of adults who had once doubted her. Every ear was attuned to Arrow, the German shepherd whose steady presence had become a symbol of undeniable instinct and truth. And in the witness room, the cousin's confession, shaky, fragmented, terrified, had opened a door no one could have predicted. The cousin's trembling fingers fumbled with a set of papers. For weeks, he had hidden them, stashed carefully in a corner of his apartment, thinking no one would ever connect them to the night of the attack. He had underestimated a child's memory, underestimated a dog's instincts, underestimated the force of their combination. And now, those hidden papers, containing the smallest but crucial evidence, were about to see the light. Arrow growled low and deliberate, a vibrating reminder of focus and intent. Lily knelt beside him, whispering softly, "It's okay. They need to see it. Show them everything." The dog's ears twitched in acknowledgement. His gaze never left the cousin, who was now pale, shaking, and cornered by his own conscience. The prosecutor leaned forward, sensing the pivotal moment. "Sir, the court needs clarity. You mentioned something you've been hiding. Please specify." The cousin's voice broke, a whisper trembling into audibility. I have papers, notes, things he didn't want anyone to find. I kept them hidden. I didn't know what to do, but the little girl, she remembered. The dog, he sees everything." A ripple of murmurs passed through the courtroom. Jurors shifted forward in their seats. The defendant's face turned a shade paler, panic flashing across his eyes. The idea that the cousin had hidden physical evidence had never crossed his mind. He had counted on silence alone. Lily whispered to Arrow, small and deliberate, "Guide them. Let them see." Arrow stepped slightly closer to the door, as if urging the cousin to comply, muscles taut, tail stiff. The handler struggled to keep the dog restrained, but everyone understood the message. The truth could not be blocked. The cousin's hands shook violently as he slowly rose to his feet, clutching a folder that had been hidden from all eyes until now. His movements were tentative, deliberate, as if every step toward the courtroom felt like moving through a minefield. He held the folder with trembling hands, the papers inside slightly bent, worn evidence that had been overlooked, dismissed, or deliberately ignored. The judge's voice cut through the tension. "Proceed," Place the folder on the stand and make its contents available for the court." The cousin complied, shaking, but Arrow didn't move. The dog remained beside Lily, a silent sentinel, watching every motion, every reaction, every flicker of deceit. The prosecutor stepped forward carefully, taking the folder. He opened it with meticulous care, flipping through pages of handwritten notes, diagrams, and even a small sketch that appeared to depict the layout of Lily's home the night of the attack. A hush fell over the courtroom. The details were precise, undeniable. The notes traced movements, interactions, and crucial moments that only someone present, someone who had acted in collusion, could have recorded. The sketch, in particular, showed a pattern that connected the cousin to the second figure Lily had described, the person whose presence had been hidden until now. The jurors leaned forward, eyes wide. Reporters scribbled frantically, pens flying across pads. Even the defendant's hands shook visibly as he realized the implications. He had counted on the cousin's silence to protect him. Now, the physical evidence was undeniable, corroborated by the child's memory and validated by Arrow's unerring instincts. Lily's eyes sparkled with quiet intensity. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "They see it now, they know." Arrow's tail flicked once, acknowledging her command. The dog's presence had not only provided moral support but had become an unspoken authority, a living, breathing validation of the truth. The cousin, tears streaming down his face, finally spoke clearly. I didn't want her to see. I didn't want anyone to know. But it's all here. Everything, the notes, the plans, everything he tried to hide." His voice broke, the weight of months of concealment crashing down upon him. The prosecutor turned to the judge, voice steady but urgent. "Your Honor, this folder contains direct evidence linking both the defendant and an accomplice to the attack. It corroborates the child's testimony and confirms what the dog has indicated through his reactions. This is crucial to understanding the full extent of the events that night." A murmur of astonishment swept through the courtroom. Jurors whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The defendant's face had gone pale, lips pressed tightly together as the realization sank in. His carefully constructed defense was unraveling, thread by thread, before the smallest eyes in the room and the sharpest instincts he had ever encountered. Arrow growled softly again, a vibration that seemed to resonate through the courtroom benches. Every adult instinctively recognized the significance. The dog was not simply reacting. He was confirming. He was amplifying the truth, reinforcing the child's observations, validating the hidden evidence now revealed. Lily rose to her feet, small but commanding. Her voice carried clearly, each word precise. "He tried to hide it. He thought no one would see, but Arrow knows and I know, and now you can all see it too." The courtroom fell silent. Every adult understood the gravity of what had just occurred. A small child and a dog had exposed what no adult had managed to uncover: concealed evidence, collusion, and deception. The defendant's hands shook as he realized his fate was no longer in his control. The cousin, still trembling, handed the folder over to the court clerk. Everything is in there," he whispered. I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want her. I didn't want anyone." His words trailed into silence, replaced by the tension that filled the room like a living thing. The judge studied the folder, then glanced at Lily and Arrow. "This is significant. The court will examine the contents thoroughly. The jury will also be given the opportunity to review the evidence in relation to the child's testimony." His eyes lingered on Lily. "Miss Carter, your observations have been extraordinary. Your testimony, combined with this evidence, is vital to the court's understanding of the events in question." A stunned hush fell over the courtroom. Reporters whispered to one another. Jurors sat forward, captivated. The defendant's face had gone ashen, panic etched across every line. The cousin slumped in his chair, broken, exposed. Arrow nudged Lily gently, tail stiff, alert. The message was clear. The moment of revelation was not complete, but the first major breakthrough had occurred. Lily's courage, the dog's instincts, and the long-hidden evidence were beginning to shift the trial in a way no one could have anticipated. The tension in the room remained palpable. Every adult, from the judge to the jurors to the lawyers, understood that the unfolding events were extraordinary. And yet, the climax had not yet arrived. The folder contained more than just notes. It contained the pieces of a puzzle that, when fully revealed, could unravel the entire conspiracy behind the attack. Lily clenched Max tightly, whispering once more to Arrow, "We're not done yet. There's more to show them." Arrow's ears twitched, his body coiled like a spring. The dog had sensed it. The child had seen it. And the courtroom, collectively, waited for the moment when the next revelation would drop like a bombshell, shifting the narrative, exposing deeper truths, and leaving no doubt about who was responsible. And just as the tension reached its peak, the cousin's trembling hand pointed to a single sheet tucked inside the folder. There's one more thing. He didn't want anyone to see this." Every eye in the courtroom fixed on the sheet. Every heart skipped a beat. The moment of revelation, the one that would completely upend the trial, was about to come. End of Part 6, leaving readers on suspense. What is on that final sheet, and how will it transform the trial? The courtroom felt impossibly tense, every heartbeat amplified in the polished chamber. Jurors leaned forward, pens hovering, not daring to miss a single detail. Reporters held their breath, scribbling frantically, sensing that history was unfolding before their eyes. Even the judge, a veteran of countless high-profile cases, was riveted, his gaze locked on the trembling cousin and the small girl standing beside Arrow. The cousin's hand shook violently as he reached for the final sheet tucked in the folder. It was thin, worn at the edges, and slightly stained, a relic of a night no one wanted to revisit. He held it up like a guilty secret, as if the paper itself radiated the consequences of exposure. This is what he didn't want anyone to see," he whispered, voice barely audible. Arrow stepped slightly forward, stiff, alert, muscles coiled like a spring. Lily's hand rested on his head, grounding him and herself at the same time. She knew that the revelation on that sheet was the moment the trial would pivot, the culmination of months of observation, fear, and courage. The judge leaned forward, voice calm but charged with authority. "Sir, place it on the stand for all to see." The cousin did as commanded, his hands trembling so violently that the sheet nearly slipped from his grasp. The clerk carefully took the paper, smoothing it on the stand so that every juror, every lawyer, and even the gallery could see. Gasps swept through the courtroom. The sheet contained a crude map of Lily's neighborhood, marked with routes, times, and cryptic notes, evidence that linked both the defendant and the second figure to the attack on her mother. It wasn't just a casual sketch. It was a plan, meticulously plotted, confirming every word Lily had remembered, every cue Arrow had reacted to, every hidden movement that adults had overlooked. The defendant's face went white as a sheet, his carefully crafted defense collapsing in the glow of the courtroom lights. He opened his mouth, attempting to speak, but the words faltered. His defense attorney rose, hands shaking slightly, clearly unprepared for this revelation. "Objection! Your Honor, this is. The judge silenced him with a raised hand. "The objection is overruled. The court must see all evidence relevant to the case. Continue." Lily's small voice, steady and unwavering, echoed through the chamber. "This is what I saw. This is what he tried to hide. Arrow knows it, I know it. And now everyone can see it too." Arrow's growl resonated through the courtroom, a low vibration that seemed to confirm the gravity of the moment. He didn't move aggressively, but every muscle in his body radiated focus and certainty. The dog's instincts had identified the lies, the fear, and the hidden truth. And now, with this sheet revealed, the adults finally understood why he had reacted so strongly from the beginning. The cousin, tears streaming down his face, sobbed openly. I thought no one would ever know. I didn't think she would notice, but she did. And the dog saw too. It's all here. Everything he tried to hide is here. The jurors leaned forward, eyes wide. Their pens scratched furiously across pads, capturing every detail. The gallery of spectators murmured in shock and disbelief. Even seasoned courtroom observers were stunned at the depth of the conspiracy revealed in such a fragile, simple piece of paper. The prosecutor stepped forward, voice sharp and deliberate. "Your Honor, this sheet directly corroborates the child's testimony and exposes the full scope of the crime. The plan, the times, the locations, all of it matches the sequence of events described by Miss Carter. This evidence is crucial for understanding the orchestration behind the attack and the involvement of both defendants." The defendant's hands trembled as he tried to maintain composure, but his efforts were futile. Every person in the room saw the panic in his eyes, the crack in his confidence, the dawning realization that his fate was no longer in his control. Lily, small but commanding, whispered to Arrow, "We see it all. Now they will too." The dog responded by nudging her hand slightly, his presence both protective and affirming. It was as if Arrow was signaling, "The truth is undeniable. Justice is within reach." The cousin, overwhelmed with guilt and fear, finally began to speak clearly, narrating the events of that night in full. He described the plan in detail, how the attack had been plotted, the timing, the roles each person had played, and the instructions he had received to keep silent. Every word matched the observations Lily had made and the instincts Arrow had confirmed. Jurors gasped audibly, leaning in as if to catch every syllable. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing a story that seemed too cinematic to be real. The courtroom felt alive with the pulse of revelation, as if the air itself vibrated with the weight of hidden truth finally being exposed. The judge's eyes were wide, his expression one of focused intensity. "This is significant," he said, voice low but firm. "The court will take careful note of this evidence, combined with the testimony of Miss Carter and the reactions of the K-9 unit, in determining the credibility and scope of the events in question." Arrow remained poised, ears perked, muscles taut. Every adult in the room instinctively recognized the gravity of his presence. He had not only validated Lily's testimony, but had also acted as an invisible mediator between truth and deceit. The cousin had been unmasked, the defendant exposed, and the courtroom had witnessed the extraordinary power of observation, memory, and instinct. And yet, even in this charged atmosphere, one question lingered, sharp, piercing, and unavoidable. Was there more hidden? The cousin's gaze flicked nervously to the gallery, then back to the sheet. There might be," he stammered, voice breaking. I thought I destroyed it all, but maybe there's more he wanted hidden." The courtroom collectively froze. The murmurs rose to whispers, jurors exchanged tense glances, and the defendant's face went pale once more. The specter of undiscovered evidence hung over the room like a dark cloud. Arrow growled again, low and resonant, sensing the lingering deception that had not yet been fully revealed. Lily, standing small but unyielding, whispered to Arrow, "We're ready. We can handle it. Show them the truth." The dog's tail flicked, a subtle but unmistakable sign of readiness. The courtroom understood instinctively. This was not the end. The climax was approaching, the final truths about the attack poised to surface. The cousin, trembling violently, clutched the folder to his chest. I can't. I need to tell everything now. It's all here, it's all." His voice broke off into sobs, the weight of months of concealment crashing down. The judge, leaning forward, fixed his gaze on the cousin. "Sir, this is your opportunity. You must disclose everything. The court, the jury, and the public deserve to know the full extent of the events that took place." Lily's hand rested on Arrow's head, grounding herself in him. The dog's steady presence seemed to convey a single, undeniable message. Truth cannot be hidden any longer. And in that moment, the courtroom felt as if time had slowed. Every adult, juror, and spectator understood that the next words, the next revelations, would determine the outcome of the trial, forever altering lives. End of Part 7, leaving readers in suspense. What else does the cousin reveal, and will the full truth finally emerge to secure justice? The courtroom was a taut wire of suspense, every heartbeat echoing against the polished wood and marble. The cousin's trembling hands clutched the folder like a lifeline. Lily stood beside Arrow, small but unwavering, her bright eyes reflecting the weight of every secret about to be revealed. The dog's steady posture, ears alert, tail stiff, radiated authority. Together, they were a silent force that no adult, no defendant could ignore. "Sir," the judge's voice was measured but commanding, "this is your opportunity to disclose everything. No detail is too small. The court demands the truth." The cousin's lips quivered. His chest heaved with the exertion of months of hidden guilt. I tried to protect him, to protect the defendant. I didn't want anyone to know. I thought I could keep it quiet, but she saw it. The little girl, she saw everything." His voice cracked, raw emotion spilling into the chamber. Lily's small voice cut through the tension like a bell. "And I told them, Arrow knows, you can't hide it anymore." Arrow's growl rumbled through the courtroom, low but resonant, vibrating through the floorboards. It wasn't aggression. It was confirmation, a primal acknowledgement of truth. Every juror, every spectator, every attorney instinctively felt the gravity of the moment. The dog had validated the child's observations, the cousin's confession, and now the evidence in the folder. The cousin nodded, swallowing hard, then began recounting the final, crucial details. He spoke haltingly, voice trembling but growing steadier as he realized that honesty was the only way forward. He described the night of the attack in painstaking detail, the defendant's actions, the instructions he had been given, the second figure's presence, the planning, and the attempts to cover tracks. "The notes," he said, shaking, "the sketches, the maps, they were his plan. He thought he could manipulate everything. I thought I could protect myself by staying silent, by pretending none of it mattered. But it all matters, everything matters, and she saw it. She remembered, and the dog he knew." The courtroom gasped collectively. Jurors leaned forward, pens scratching furiously, eyes wide. Reporters whispered to one another, astonished at the layers of hidden truth being revealed. The defendant's face turned ashen, panic flaring in his eyes. His carefully constructed defense had collapsed under the combined force of a child's memory, a dog's instincts, and the cousin's confession. The prosecutor stepped forward, voice precise and commanding. "Your Honor, this testimony, combined with the tangible evidence from the folder and the observations of Miss Carter, establishes both the intent and the orchestration behind the crime. We now have a complete chain of events linking the defendants directly to the attack." The defendant's jaw tightened. Beads of sweat formed along his temples. Every strategy he had relied upon, manipulation, deception, silence, had crumbled. For the first time, he realized that the smallest, most underestimated people in the courtroom had dismantled everything he had built. Lily pressed her hand gently on Arrow's head, whispering softly, "It's okay. You did it. They see it now. Justice sees it too." The dog's ears twitched, acknowledging her, his muscles coiled but steady. He had been more than an observer. He had been a silent guardian of truth, and now that truth was breaking through. The cousin took a deep, shuddering breath and revealed the final piece, the secret he had hoped would never see daylight. The second figure, he forced me to lie to everyone. He said no one would believe a child. He said no one would notice a dog. He thought the evidence was buried, but it was. It's all here, everything. The courtroom fell silent. The gravity of the confession was staggering. Jurors were spellbound, eyes fixed on the fragile, trembling man and the small girl who had brought the truth to light. The defendant's face lost every trace of composure. Panic flooded his expression, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the table. The judge leaned forward, voice calm but imbued with finality. "The court recognizes that the testimony of Miss Carter, validated by Arrow and corroborated by the physical evidence presented, establishes a clear narrative of deception, coercion, and criminal intent. This court will act accordingly." The prosecutor held up the final sheet, the evidence that had changed the trajectory of the trial. "Your Honor, this sheet confirms the timeline, the movements, and the involvement of both the defendant and the accomplice. Miss Carter's testimony aligns perfectly with this documentation. Arrow's responses corroborate the credibility of her observations. The court now possesses an irrefutable account of the events." The jurors scribbled notes furiously, absorbing every detail. The defendant's hands trembled. His smirk was gone, replaced by a pale, haunted expression. The gallery of spectators leaned forward in tense anticipation, sensing the enormity of the moment. This trial had transformed from a procedural proceeding into a real-life drama of courage, instinct, and exposure. Lily, standing small but resolute, whispered again to Arrow, "We did it. They can't ignore it now." Arrow nudged her hand, a quiet affirmation, his eyes never leaving the cousin. Together, the girl and the dog had revealed a conspiracy no adult had fully grasped, a hidden truth that had remained invisible until now. The cousin, finally released from the weight of months of silence, sobbed openly. "I'm sorry, I never wanted anyone to get hurt. I didn't want her to see, but it's over now. The truth, it's here." The judge, nodding the emotional weight in the room, addressed the courtroom. "This trial has revealed extraordinary circumstances. The courage of a child and the instincts of a trained K-9 have brought to light evidence and testimony that might otherwise have remained hidden. The court acknowledges the importance of these revelations and will proceed to ensure justice is served based on this complete account." The defendant's shoulders slumped. His carefully constructed world had crumbled under the weight of observation, instinct, and truth. He no longer had the ability to manipulate or deceive. The courtroom collectively recognized the inevitability of justice. Lily, despite her youth, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had faced fear, she had confronted uncertainty, and she had witnessed the power of truth emerging. Arrow, alert but calm now, stood by her side, a loyal sentinel who had validated her courage and insights. The jurors exchanged determined glances. The evidence, the testimony, and the corroborating observations of both child and dog had created an unshakable narrative. The trial's trajectory had shifted irrevocably. The chain of deception had been broken. As the judge prepared to issue instructions for deliberation, Lily whispered softly to Arrow, "We did it. They know. Justice is coming." Arrow's ears twitched once more, tail flicking lightly, a silent signal of understanding and acknowledgement. The courtroom's tension, once suffocating, now began to shift. There was no immediate resolution, no dramatic flourish of gavel pounding, just the slow, inevitable sense that truth had been unveiled, that lies had been exposed, and that the smallest voice and the keenest instincts had altered the course of justice. The defendant slumped in his chair, the realization dawning fully. The jurors, scribbling notes and leaning forward in rapt attention, now understood the full weight of what had been revealed. The gallery whispered, the story unfolding in real time for all to see. Lily clutched Max tightly, feeling the tremor of adrenaline subside slightly. She had been scared, yes, but she had been brave. Arrow nudged her hand gently, a reminder that they had faced this together. They had witnessed the power of courage, truth, and perception in a world that often underestimated the small and the seemingly insignificant. The judge's gavel finally struck the desk, once, firmly. The sound reverberated through the chamber. The court recognizes that extraordinary testimony and evidence have been presented. The jury will deliberate based on this full account. This court thanks Miss Carter and K-9 Unit Arrow for their service in uncovering the truth. A wave of whispers passed through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled the final notes. Jurors sat back, absorbing the revelation. The defendant, pale and shaking, understood fully that his web of deception had been destroyed. The cousin, broken but honest at last, wept quietly, having unburdened months of fear and guilt. And Lily, small and seemingly fragile, stood tall beside Arrow, knowing she had changed the course of the trial. The story of courage, instinct, and truth had reached its apex. The courtroom, now alive with quiet awe, had witnessed something remarkable, that even the smallest voice, when paired with honesty and resolve, could illuminate shadows adults failed to see. End of Part 8. Conclusion. Justice is imminent, the conspiracy exposed, and the little girl with her loyal dog leaves a courtroom forever changed, proving that courage and perception can overturn even the darkest secrets.